feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Day More NBA podcast, and we are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you late Tuesday evening. It's December 23rd. Happy holidays. I'm joined here in the studio by Britt Robson. We are doing an immediate reaction podcast. We just walked over from Target Center after the Wolves beat the New York Knicks on Tuesday night, and we'll run through some things from that game specifically, but also a lot's happened since last time we did a podcast. The Thunder game, of course, building on that to some extent with the win against the Bucks, and now a win against the Knicks as well. It does feel like, I don't want to say for the first time this season, but it does really feel like things are trending very, very much in the right direction for this Wolves team. Where would you like to start, Britt?
Well, I think that they have cleared some of the concerns that I had anyway. And I know, it was a fake good record for a while. It was one of those things where
it was unproven.
John Schumann, who I always shout out, a great NBA.com guy, had a thing with his power rankings on Monday where he took the 15 teams and how they had played against the 15 teams with winning records and how they had played against the other 14 teams. The Wolves were next to last in winning percentage in those. They were 3-8 through 11 games. Some teams had only played 7 games against over 500 teams, Oklahoma City being one of them, in part because they don't play Oklahoma City. But some teams played as many as 16. The Wolves are kind of in the middle there at 11, but at 3 wins and 8 losses against winning teams isn't good. And they were 2-8 before they beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, and now they're 4-8. And I think 2-0 this week, as well as playing badly and beating the Bucks, but doing it in their inimitable fourth quarter fashion. It was kind of a trap game between two really strong opponents that they have some emotional investment in. But I think also the Thunder game was just a rock fight, a really good game. Both teams competing really hard. Oklahoma City had the rest disadvantage. This game, no Brunson and no OG Anunoby, 2 guys that have hurt the Wolves before. And Cat was there and went off for 40 tonight. But this was a really solid win, I thought, regardless. They didn't have Jaden McDaniels. But I thought the most important thing to me was you could pick 4 or 5 guys who had really good games and just put the spotlight on them and go, they're one of the main reasons they won. And that hasn't happened all that much. It was Julius basically hauling them out of danger for a lot of the first 3 or 4 weeks. It was Ant during his times doing things, different people at different times. Jaden McDaniels has had some stellar games, but they really haven't had a situation where a lot of people are playing extremely well at the same time. And in this case, the same time meant over the course of a game. So I thought it was a really solid win in terms of it being something that ratifies what we hope were going to happen with this team. The better they are, the more fun they are to cover. And it's been a lot more fun for me. I haven't liked the idea of saying, but, they don't really have this. They haven't proven anything yet. And they're starting to prove things.
So my unproven line maybe wasn't all that wrong.
Absolutely not. I mean, I think now, though, that I feel a lot better because, Denver on Christmas night in Denver is going to be another tough game. Then they play their next 6 or 7 in a row against Eastern Conference teams. Some of them will be good. Yeah. But they can't help now that the easy part of their schedule is over. And I say good riddance. I think that this team plays better. They are more focused. They care more. They've been in the conference finals 2 years in a row. And whether they care to admit it or not, they've always had a tendency of playing down to their opposition.
They do care to admit it. They do admit that.
Yeah. So, I think that playing up to their opposition is a lot more fun.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think it's playing up to their opposition is often led by Anthony Edwards and led well in this last week. Obviously, the Oklahoma City game, in addition tonight, where he had 38 points he was 11 of 17 from 2, 4 of 10 from 3. Did not exactly rack up the assists and rebounds. Just 1 rebound and 2 assists. But I've been really impressed by Ant's play of late. As we were talking about sitting next to each other during the game, I felt like his offense came easy in this one. And I think what I like to talk about is why that was.
Right.
Because I think it's a product of a few things. I think first and foremost, him reading situationally and then shot making at a really high clip. I think tonight was an example of him being a 3-level scorer. The mid-range looks that he took, I thought were on point, situationally there with the bigs kind of waiting back at the basket.
They needed points.
Yeah.
And they didn't need gambles. And I'm thinking in particular where the Knicks closed it again in the third quarter and he came down and hit 2 or 3 in a row.
Yeah.
2 mid-ranges, I know, in a row. And worked, used his footwork, his purpose, and it was efficient. It was clinical. And
clinical. Yeah.
And it really felt like I'm getting us a bucket.
I'm
not getting us a spectacular 3, or I'm not driving through 4 guys and hoping to draw the foul. I'm getting 2 points.
The question I asked to a lot of the players in the locker room post game was about the presence of a point guard being out there. I would say that's maybe one factor as to why some of Ant's offense has looked easier, is because it's been a lot of Bones Highland and a lot of Mike Conley out there. Bones, they're different types of point guards, but Bones is pace injection, which that in and of itself, I think helps Anthony Edwards because pace helps loosen up the defense once they're kind of in the half court setting. And then Mike Conley is just your traditional point guard who, started this game tonight in place of Jaden McDaniels, but also when Jaden got hurt, Mike started the second half of the Milwaukee game. And we've just seen so much more ball movement, I felt like, over the last 6 quarters, the second half of the Milwaukee game and tonight, but also the Oklahoma City game too. Ball movement has been more present. I wouldn't put that all on the presence of a point guard, but to me that has helped.
It helps in the sense that the 50 to 60% of the offense isn't Ant and Julius staring down what the defenders are going to do, and then everybody else kind of waiting to see what their decision is so they can decide what to do. The Bones and Conley are both putting pace into the game. And for that matter, Dante DiVincenzo, I thought, plus minus isn't kind to him tonight, but he had 4 assists to 4 different players in like the first 9 minutes of the game and hit a couple of threes in his usual way. But I think his playmaking is more combo guard playmaking, without a doubt. He's not somebody who is purposefully looking for things. He does have great 2-man action with Julius Randle and is developing good 2-man action with others, but pace also is good for him. I think that what is most important is that it isn't so dependent on one of the 2 playmakers to initiate and then finish the offense. It seems like they're doing both.
Right.
It's and when more people touch the ball and when more people are moving around, even if it's getting faster from one side of the half court to the other, it matters. I mean, it's always mattered. It's more fun to watch. It's more fun to play. And they're having a lot more fun out there. I saw a lot of fun in the OKC game, the Knicks game, even the second half of Milwaukee.
It's a better vibe, like amongst the group. I asked Ant about that in the locker room afterwards. Just kind of feels like a good
Absolutely.
vibe with this
Right.
group. And he was saying, we know each other better. I felt like he's like, we know each other better. We could tell each other things, to kind of get on each
Accountability,
other.
right.
But I think also, like positively, that
Right.
they feel like friends. You know what I'm saying? Like accountability with your friends, you can hold accountable a little bit more. And I think fun matters.
I think quality wins matter. I
Sure.
think that, as much as we've been kind of semi-doubting them, they've been kind of semi-doubting themselves because they haven't really, put those, wins, just, stack up really solid wins, really good wins. And I think if you beat OKC, or if you beat the Knicks, if you just begin to get traction against pretty good teams and then really good teams, you get
doing it in a way that like feels like we're playing the right way.
Everybody plays with more confidence, and that confidence breeds a desire to have rhythm. When I asked Rudy, who, by the way, we should get into at some point in time because he's been phenomenal, why he is rebounding and playing defense so much better, he says, I'm in a rhythm. And that you don't get into a rhythm by yourself as much as you get into a rhythm with your teammates, Rudy in particular. And so I think that's been really important. I think Mike Conley, I told him in the locker room tonight, you're moving so much better than you were earlier in the season. He said, so much better. I was not feeling well at all. And I said, especially your lateral quickness. And he said, that's, where a lot of where it was. And you could see it. I mean, he's a chase defender who was lagging on the chase. His anticipation seemed to still be there, but the body wouldn't cooperate. And I just thought he might be washed. And maybe, I mean, I'm not going to say, he's been baptized in the waters of Lake Minnetonka and suddenly he's fine.
Very, very Prince theme of you this week. Yeah.
And so, but I do notice he's feeling better. He's feeling better about himself. He's feeling better about his body, and not in that order. I think the body came first and then himself came better when he realized what he was able to do. And I think that he is bending the team, and Bones is bending the team a little bit away from that double heliocentric. You got two circles going and there's not a lot of room for anybody else to make decisions. And I think when you also are making decisions as part of the play, your investment goes up. And when your investment goes up, you try harder on defense. When you try harder on defense, you get stops and get easier looks on offense. I mean, it's just what good basketball is all about. And they would stop and start a lot for the first 2 months of the season, it felt like, where they would eke out wins. They would grind out wins, but they strained. And, this wasn't that easy a game. The Knicks kept coming back, and the Wolves, to their credit, kept making distance again. The Knicks grabbed the lead, but it was short-lived. And I just really feel like they were the better team tonight. It would have been very interesting to see if Jaden was back, Brunson was back, and OG Anunoby was back, what the outcome would have been. I think it would have been a lot closer than it was. But as it was, they beat a good Knicks team that wanted this game and played hard. And that was a team that came in here 20-8. And Denver's up next. Another top 2, top 3 offense that they got to deal with. So I really like the idea. First of all, just from a if you love the sport, watching two quality teams try to figure out how to beat each other is a lot more fun than wondering if the worser team can somehow figure things out to pull an unlikely victory away from somebody who's perhaps not as engaged. It's just not the same level of drama, and the play is it's inferior basketball. And the Wolves have been in too many inferior basketball games this season. It's really good to see this team not only play good basketball, but win good basketball games. And that's why I'm really kind of bullish right now on the last, 3 or 4 games. And, I'm sure there are longtime Wolves fans who would say, I told you so. And you've been bad mouthing this team for 6 to 8 weeks. But I've watched a lot of bad basketball, and I know when a team isn't playing well.
You said 2 circles. I want to talk about the second circle. He had a really big fourth quarter. Julius Randle did. But before we do that, I want to quickly do an announcement that Kyle and I will be at Treasure Island Resort and Casino on January 17th. We are doing a live show there and a watch party. The Wolves play the San Antonio Spurs on the 17th. We did this last year as well. Kind of the setup for these events is the game is at 7:00. It's a Saturday night. What we'll do is from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m., Kyle and I will be there, and we'll kind of do a happy hour. Get there early, hang out, ask questions. And then at 6:00, we'll start recording. I will record from 6 until 7 when the game starts. And then we'll be there hanging out throughout the game and afterwards as well. They're offering a couple of like promotions with this. There will be free food. There's prize giveaways. The prize giveaways last year were awesome. Like they have a partnership with the Timberwolves. So they have a bunch of gear and things that they'll give away. And they did drawings kind of throughout the night. These are really fun. And also, if you want to get a hotel for the night there, if you use the promo code Wolves on the website, or when you call them, you'll get 20% off of your one night stay at Treasure Island. Again, we did this last year. It was really fun, and I'll keep reminding you about it, but I figured about 3 weeks out now. If you wanted to mark off your calendars for January 17th for a watch party at Treasure Island with a happy hour and live show in advance of that, we would love to see you there. For more information, you can visit ticasino.com. All right, let's talk about Julius a little bit, Britt. 17 points in the fourth quarter. No 3-point shots. It was attack. It started right at the beginning of the fourth quarter, which had some of us on Media Row noting that Ant's not out there right now. Is it coincidence or not? Because to the two circles point, right. When Julius's best games largely this season have been, or many of his best games have been in the 7 games that Ant has missed this year. And I thought it was encouraging that it did kind of sustain Julius's play, sustained through the whole fourth quarter, even once Ant came back in midway through the fourth. They weren't both scoring in tandem. I guess I could look at it right here. I think Ant only had 4 points in the fourth quarter. I'm still waiting for that, honestly, like first time where it feels like a machine gun and it's both of them.
Right.
That's not what happened in this game. It was Julius attacking Cat specifically, defensively, kind of going at that matchup. Right. But what was, I thought, unique about it is it was a rough start to the game from Julius Randle. And oftentimes when there's been a rough start to the game, the game kind of ends and Julius has like 13 points and it's an inefficient shooting night.
Or he'll Levine it, which is my shorthand for, the Wolves are up by 7 or 8 with 4 minutes to play, and then he'll go off or something. The points were meaningful. The
first New Orleans game was like that. Remember?
Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of times where 28 points aren't created equal sometimes, or in this case, I think it's 25. He had a terrible line he was like 3 for 10, I think, at one point.
3 for 11, yeah.
Yeah. And so he's 3 for 11. He winds up 10 for 20, which means he was 7 for 9 in the fourth quarter. And as you mentioned, I think either his first or his second bucket of the quarter, he flexed.
Yeah.
And it was And I had previously tweeted out that Randle is hurting the team. He's just maybe, he'll get it together. And then when he flexed, I said, I think he's trying to will himself into playing better. That has happened before. We'll see if that's going to happen again. And then he scored 8 straight points. So those 2 points on that flex, and then he scored the next 3 points. And it was not to be denied. I mean, it was one of those things where he can be brutishly brilliant. And that's not 2 words that often go together. The beauty of Randle is he uses his footwork, his arms, his torso in a manner that is meant to both create space and to create contact. How much space and how much contact is up to the defender.
Sure.
If the defender wants contact, he will deliver it. If the defender wants to give him space because they don't want the contact, he will take it. The key on that, of course, is that's the brutish part. The brilliance has to be the finish. Can he finesse the finish? Sometimes it needs to be a hard banker, a banker that uses his energy and goes in hard. So he's got to be placed right on the carom over the rim where it needs to go in. Sometimes it's almost the equivalent of a floater. Those things are all difficult to do as you're spinning around. And so what happened tonight was he condensed a typical 6 or 7 brutishly brilliant plays into about 6 minutes.
Yeah.
And that usually happens over the course of a game. He'll get a couple in the first quarter, 2 or 3 in the second, maybe 1 in the third, 3 in the fourth, or whatever. But this was, he was frankly hurting the team and not shooting well and wanting to try to will himself into it with ill-advised shots, I thought, in the second and third quarter to try to see if he could get himself going. And flexing is, it's one of those things. He says it's for fun. I don't believe that.
What he said was he flexed like that to get himself going.
Yeah, well, and that's really, I think, what it is. But when he said everybody wants to have fun, he goes, that's another one of the reasons I flex, to have fun. Because
he also got a bucket and one on Cat.
Yeah, exactly.
They can say, the trade, and I'm happy to be in Minnesota, and I'm happy to be in New York now. But that 4-minute stretch was a statement.
Yeah,
no, it was a statement from Julius of he walked into the stands 2 times in that stretch, in addition to the flex,
right.
And gave and he was giving the crowd the let's go. He doesn't do that all the time. It was, I think it started with him trying to get himself going, but then it was no, I'm here,
Then, the initial flex was like, okay, let's see. But then what happened was, everybody in the place knew that he was on a roll all of a sudden, and he was playing with that brutish brilliance. And Cat had 4 or 5 fouls at the time, depending on, he got the 5th one on him when you want to have that happen. But it's suddenly the court tilted, and I don't mind. The heliocentrism is when there are pauses. Julius was not burning a lot of clock with these things. He was going quickly and decisively. And that's actually, taking it globally again for a minute, there has been very, very little taking the air out of the ball and deciding what you want to do. There's been a lot more quick decisions in the last 2 weeks or so. I think some of it's the caliber of competition. I think some of it is Finch. And some of it is the team just deciding. And some of it, of course, is Bones and Mike Conley and Dante DiVincenzo, better point guard play. But specific to tonight, that is as concentrated a period of that brutish brilliance being flexed that we've seen from Julius Randle, and he's had some really good moments that way this year.
And I thought it like strategically made sense.
It was a tight game,
and Cat had 4 fouls,
and
Ant was out of the game. You know, they needed that.
When he was finished with his 8-point run, I think they were up 12 all of a sudden.
And, it was
and
over.
That felt like, you know, it was a huge difference. And then Ant got to the act with a couple of steals.
Yeah.
And then he got a couple of breakaways off those steals. One was a dime, one he took himself. And all next thing you know, if they lose this game, it's because they're really going to blow it. It's not that they're going to, get ground out here. And I think Julius swung that game. And once again, this is a ratification of what Chris Finch thinks this team can be. It doesn't make a lot of sense in the modern NBA to have 2 guys like this who are kind of similar in the ways they score. And yet, when you can put together better ball movement, better pace, and phenomenal Rudy Gobert, you've got something.
Yeah, to have the double heliocentric thing, I think everything else needs to be the ball movement and the player movement so as to make it work. If you just have the 2 circles moving and everything else is static, then it's just now you're just relying on Ant and Julius to have.
It's like the karma of the basketball guards will smite you down. It's like, and
then sometimes they'll overcome it because they're Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle, 2 of the best isolation players.
Yeah.
But less likely to do so, especially against a good team, a better defensive team. So it seems to be that this addition of ball movement and pace and overall better flow to the offense is kind of the cure to the times where they tilt too far into the isolation.
Absolutely. And not to mention that it's more fun to watch. I don't know, covering a team that really wins a lot by playing a style that, the James Harden Rockets are probably the epitome of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the times people would, who would you rather have? Would you rather have the Phoenix Suns with Steve Nash or Raja Bell and, the Dunleavy, games? Or would you rather have the teams that won it all, the Spurs or, although the Spurs did play beautiful basketball themselves. But the point being, style points, like any game, it is a lot more fun to watch some teams than it is others. And the Wolves sometimes have not been a good watch, even when they've won. And so I'm enjoying the fact that not only are they winning, and again, they're winning against good teams, but they're winning in a manner that involves more people, involves more movement, involves more athleticism, and doesn't feel like a math problem.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about Rudy. Rudy being in a rhythm. Let's call it that. As he said, for a funky player, it's funky to think about him being in a rhythm. But if you've been watching, he is. And
he is.
Go ahead.
No, I just I can't say it any better than Chris Finch said it. I think he exaggerated maybe a little when he said he's better than he was 2 years ago, because he was phenomenal. He said he's like the defensive player. He's playing like defensive player of the year. He looks like he's playing like he did 2 years ago, and maybe better. And it's
I would like to think what Finch was talking about is that he's playing better overall, because I don't think it's possible
very
for him to be the
on defense 2 years ago.
Yeah, but he is playing offense a lot better than he did 2 years ago.
And his anticipation on defense, one of the things I will say about this is that
please do.
is that he's
Only
no
one,
longer like my teammate is doing this, so I have to do this. Or, this kind of thing where that Rudy is trying to save the day, straining to save the day.
Yeah, like programmatic kind of.
Yeah.
If this, then that.
his anticipation is better right now. And what that means is his decision making on when to strain isn't as strained. He's getting there faster or not going at all and properly staying home. Same thing with rebounding. He's knowing where the ball is going to go. He's not tipping the ball nearly as much as he was before. He's grabbing it with two hands. He's hand fighting his men off. He's shedding players, as Finch likes to say, when people are ganging up on him under the boards. And he doesn't feel like he's the school monitor on defense. He feels like he is the best player among peers on defense. And that's a big difference.
It is. I mean, I've talked at length about the offensive growth, because that's really stood out to me over the last 2 weeks. I mean, the whole season of just a diversity of ways he's impacting the game offensively, and especially in the ranges that he typically struggles in, the not right around the basket. That's been good. I haven't been as in on the defense. Not that it hasn't been good. Rudy's always going to be good. It's just
hard to get that much better than he is.
Well, and it isn't as good as 2 years ago.
Right.
I don't
think it is either.
And that's okay, because it still is really, really good. I think last time I looked up defensive estimator plus minus, it's like 96th percentile again. And he's right up there. So it's good is probably an understatement. The reason I'm not talking about it is because it's not new. The offensive stuff is new. The offensive rebounding stuff is a special addition to giving him more on offense, which I think contributes to his overall rhythm. Jason and I were talking about, there is just something to that, when you're a little bit involved on offense, you get a little bit more out of the guy defensively. I think we know that to be true with Rudy. It's funny to me how, for a player who kind of does the exact same stuff every game, his job is the same. It's not super matchup dependent.
Yep.
There's not much of a change in what his role is. I don't really have my head wrapped around why there's then a volatility in his play.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I have one.
Yeah, go ahead. Only one though. That's the rule.
Yeah. When was his last Stone Hands game? I mean, game where he just basically blew about 4 plays.
Phoenix.
Which has happened half a dozen times every year at a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Every year, there's about 6 games where he just muffs passes, makes a ridiculous angle on a shot look like, what are you doing? Just there is a better hand-eye coordination with the ball and his body. Sure. And it was always a mystery why that would crop up to begin with, but you knew when it arrived that, you were going in for a rough afternoon, and there's less of that. And again, I think some of that is anticipation. And I also think for a change, I can actually this season use the word continuity as a good word in the regular season of 25-26 for the Minnesota Timberwolves, because I really do think that Jaden McDaniels knows his game and finds him in ways that are consistent, and that DiVincenzo is doing that, Julius is doing that, Ann is doing that. None of them are doing that fantastically, with the possible exception of Jaden McDaniels. But if you remember back when he first joined the team, we were saying only Cat has really ever been able to find him. And if you think about that, was your typical Cat, where he'd hit you really nicely once and then he'd miss you by a mile the next time. And you'd say to yourself, well, at least Cat is trying. Cat's going out of his way to involve Rudy. And now it's a little bit more integrated into what he's doing. And I do think he is more familiar. I think McDaniels has found the Kyle Anderson secret of making the passes short, making the passes look very similar to shots. And where McDaniels has been able to get away with something that Kyle very rarely did is he can hit Gobert with bounce passes. And some of that is Gobert is learned the dunker spot, which he was very new to when Kyle was here. Gobert has himself learned how to switch sides of the dunker spot. And that has really helped him in
it's
terms
a weird
of
floor
how he
spacing
receives.
thing. Yeah.
How he receives the ball.
Totally. No. And it is his way of floor spacing. It is.
I know. It sounds
all
funny. It's like an 8-foot difference,
right?
But it makes a difference. Those 8 feet, he takes people with him, or at the very least, that's another lane. And if somebody's on that side of the floor, going to the weak side in the dunker spot was almost like a job rather than a rhythm, as you know, to use his word. He's in sync with his teammates. And one other thing, since we're talking about Rudy, that I thought was really good tonight, and Randle is good at this sometimes, when he goes out of his way to praise somebody. And we're talking about Gobert and what's it like to play with Rudy nowadays. I think John asked it. And he said, he's just so much more of a leader. He's saying things in the huddle that making a big impact. He's really helping people. And then he said, Randle said, he's really helping me. And that was cool to hear from two guys who operate in a very specific real estate that is contested.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't want to say they're a bad fit, but like on paper, they're a bad fit personnel wise.
Absolutely.
So to be able to make it work, you need to be catering to the other. And I think what Julius is talking about is the ways in which Rudy is catering to him. And I think at times that I wouldn't give that a 10 out of 10, the way those two cater to each other, but it's not Toronto of last year.
No,
you know, and it's
not only that, but it is, sometimes it isn't even working in tandem. It is just an admiration for what this person has to do at this particular time.
Right.
I mean, I think that admiration, you, me, and Jim Pete talked about this one time. The longer you watch Gobert, the more you admire the little things about him that you don't see. People who only see Gobert 5 times a year tops don't appreciate him as much.
You know what makes me appreciate him more? When I turn on other games on League Pass. or in the Reed Randle minutes. You know, but like it is one of those things.
There are no highways.
When it's not there, when he's not there, it is a highway. Actually, I wanted to talk about that a little bit because I don't know. They won the game. It's all good. I'm not trying to nitpick the game.
Well, but, we haven't said a damn thing bad about
I got one here. So I am concerned about this team against teams with the scoring big.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look up above the Wolves in the standings, you got teams with scoring bigs. You got one on Christmas Day in Jokic.
Mm-hmm.
You got Alperen Sengun on the Rockets there. And then Wemby's kind of a case in and of himself.
Yep.
And I think obviously all three of those guys are going to be a challenge for this team to guard, even with Rudy out there.
Yes.
But
especially since I think all of them have they figured out that they have a good tandem semi-big next to them.
Yeah.
I mean, Sengun has a couple of guys.
Or Smith or KD or whatever. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. And if you're sitting around watching basketball or football on Christmas Day, there will be a ton going on over at Prize Picks. Not only will you have ample games to choose from to pick for your Prize Picks lineup, but there are a bunch of promotions going on this time of year. I was looking this morning and they have a Picks Miss promotion going on where you get a $15 protected play. They often offer deals like this. What a protected play is a $15 protected play is you put together a $15 lineup, and if it wins, you win. And if it doesn't, that $15 is put back into your account. Always click on that promotions tab before you submit a lineup to give yourself a better chance to win. If you are out of your fantasy football playoffs after this week, this is a way to keep playing fantasy sports as the season goes on. You know the NFL players after tracking them all season. You can make a lineup out of them, and you know the NBA players from watching the Wolves as well. All you need to do is put 2 or more players in your lineup to win. If you don't yet have a PrizePicks account, all you have to do there is put in the promo code Dane when you sign up. Lets them know you came from us, and you will receive $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's prizepicks.com or the PrizePicks app using promo code Dane. Whatever. I don't think the Reed Randle group can guard those type of guys. I think that's going to be, and they couldn't guard Cat tonight. You know, in the first quarter, while the Wolves were kind of running over them when Rudy was out there, for 4 minutes in the first quarter, it was Reed and Randle were out there together, and the Knicks won those minutes 11-8. And then in the second quarter, it was 3.5 minutes, and it was Reed and Randle out there, and the score was Wolves 5, Knicks 12.
Right.
And again, like, that doesn't sound that bad, but the other minutes, the Wolves were winning.
Right.
You know, in significantly. And if the only answer for countering the scoring big when Rudy's off the floor and it's Reed and Randle out there is going to be a zone, I don't trust the sustainability of that in a playoff series against the Sengun, for sure, against a Jokic. I mean, he'll pick that apart. And Wemby as well. So I think that's just big picture, still something that they need to answer. And the Reed Randle minutes have gotten way better. I mean, progressed linearly over the course of the season on defense as well. But you're not playing Karl Anthony Towns every night. You're not playing these other guys in the West that I'm talking about. And I don't know. And I don't know what's the other lever you pull. I mean, it's not going to go to Baron J or something like that. There's not another guy
at the level they're playing now. I'll give the positive spin right now. I'm in such a positive mood toward this team right now. But 2 years ago, when they were fantastic defensively, we remember and rue sometimes how much the defense dropped when Cat was the main big. I mean, it just did.
Barely. Yeah.
And it will, you know, whether it was Cat, I know Kyle shored that up. Kyle Anderson shored that up quite a bit, playing next to Cat on that. But there was always that huge drop off, or you'd see these numbers where Cat, the offense improved by 12 points, and the defense also went down by 12 points. It was a wash when Cat was out there without Rudy. I think that is, to some extent, the nature of a team built around Rudy Gobert, is that's your defensive identity. You don't run a lot of high wall and fly around. And if you do, it's going to be, you know, one of those things that's kind of hard to toggle. But I do think, and it's costly because you burn a lot of defensive capital doing it, but if you put McDaniels and Jalen Clark out there, and it's almost like you know, a horns defense, you know, rather than offense. And
Jaden wasn't out there tonight to kind of disprove some of my point here.
But I mean, it's still, it's a point worth saying because it still happens. And they have gotten better, but Randle and Nas are sine wavy. They are, you know, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. Very rarely do they have a great defensive game of the kind that Rudy Gobert puts up, or a lot of quality defenders put up, where you know that you're safe. If Nas is on a guy in the low block, don't worry about it. Right. If Randle is on a guy in the low block, don't worry about it. It's not that way.
What do you think will happen, you know, 7 minutes into the first quarter of the Wolves-Nuggets game on Christmas, when Rudy checks out and Jokic is still out there? How are the Wolves guarding Jokic at that time?
It depends on the health of Jaden, I think, to some extent, because we don't know if he'll be back.
Sure.
If he's not back,
like, even, is it Julius or is it Nas even as the primary?
Well, Nas, do you remember that time when Rudy had his kid and Nas played magnificently
Game 2.
And we haven't seen remotely anything that good from Nas against Denver since then, quite frankly. He's been good at times, but he hasn't been, hey, we don't need Rudy Gobert tonight good,
Right.
And Randle,
I don't think Nas has cared as much about defense once since that moment in game 2.
yeah, that was
Denver.
part of it. And also, he's lighter. I mean, Nas likes to fly around. Nas does not want to be a great low post defender in the classic sense, because that means he's going to have to bang bodies all the time. And to make it work, he's going to have a frame that he doesn't like the other 80% of the time he plays, because he can't do the stuff he wants to do with that much bulk on him. So I think that's part of it. I guess I would challenge Randle to take the body on Jokic. Randle is a brutish guy, and he doesn't mind contact.
Brilliantly.
But he goes away from it. You could tell that he's never developed the habit of being a reliable defender. Mm-hmm. He has developed key moments and even stretches of games. Actually, the second half tonight, he was actually pretty good on defense. And again, that might be that kind of Knicks Wolves thing you were talking about. They're going to have to get more on Christmas from both Nas and Randle, because, where else are you going to go? Who else is, well,
Valanciunas might be out there too.
Yeah. And, to be fair, there's been a little bit of a bloom off the rose type thing, but we saw Jalen Clark guard Zion. We saw Jalen Clark guard people that we, You
going full Caruso here?
No, that's actually not a bad comp for Jalen Clark. I hadn't thought of that. An undeveloped Caruso.
Oh, I've made that comp before.
Have you? That's a good comp.
Yeah. You don't like his jumper enough, though.
No, no. I mean, we have
we have a difference of opinion on that shot.
But I will say that after the two bigs we're talking about, Jalen Clark is, and if McDaniels isn't healthy,
you're making my point that if Jalen Clark is part of the answer for guarding Nikola Jokic.
But you remember how they turned that game 7 around in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
It was if Jalen Clark can indeed go full Caruso, that's what Caruso did. He stopped Jokic.
Yeah, I don't think that'll be. I get what you're saying, but I don't think that'll be the answer.
Let's face it. To your point,
I don't even think Jalen Clark is
play. If Denver is smart and they get the opportunity to exploit that particular matchup for as long as they can, they should hammer that button and have Jokic, do what he did to Rudy. But even a Rudy Gobert, if we remember, having Rudy as the floater and Cat as the guy, that may wind up being what they do anyway with Randle on Jokic. Now that hasn't happened as much. They've been putting Rudy on Jokic for most of the time since the Cat trade. So, but it's a wrinkle worth considering.
Yeah, and again, I just think it's relevant because I'm really looking forward to the Houston matchup too.
Houston is
going to be interesting. Yeah,
I mean, Houston's got players that are 6'5", that are strong.
Yeah, and so are the Wolves. They're weirdly, those teams are similar. Yeah. The Wolves and the Rockets are, the
Rockets pound the glass. The Rockets are the living embodiment of Ime Udoka.
Sure,
being somebody. That is going to be.
But I'm saying Rudy's doing that too.
Yeah, right.
Like the Wolves have
Rudy gets his flagrant foul that sends him into a suspension.
I don't know. Again, it's just something I'm noting and thinking about. Going forward here. You wrote a mailbag today, or came out today earlier, and you had a lot in there about the point guard position.
Yeah, that's what most of the questions really wanted to know.
Yeah,
I look terrible on my Bones.
That's exactly where I was going.
But I'll stand by it.
Yeah. Okay. So if you all haven't read the column, you can read that over at Min Post. It was a mailbag question, ton of questions that you plugged in there. But you did say you are a Bones Highland skeptic.
Yes.
And my question to that would be, in what context?
Right.
Of course, I would say it's fair if you want to be skeptical about Bones Highland being like a starting point guard, but it feels like a pretty good fit in this context that he's currently being used in as a bench piece, another creator. I even like tonight when he was out there with Mike Conley, he's weirdly like fitting in. It feels to me in whatever the lineup context is. I mean, the Wolves won his 25 and a half minutes by 24 points. Hit 3 threes, had some definitely questionable shot selection. And if you said that's what you're skeptical about is Bones Highland's shot selection, sure. I did not agree with your point that you said you'd be playing Rob Dillingham over him. That was a step too far for me in the skepticism.
Sure. Well, that's because I don't regard those minutes as going to be as heavy.
I got you. Yeah.
But my word, if I had to sum up my skepticism, would be composure. I do not think that Bones Highland, I think what makes him good is his excitability, his infectious energy, his desire to light a fire under the team and to be a happy-go-lucky spark of a guy, a joyful player. When the chips are down and they're needing somebody to organize an offense and make the right decisions against a good defense, I don't trust him. That may be the product of what I know about. I saw him his rookie year, and I thought he was very, very undisciplined. I thought that he was a hooper a lot more than he was a player, a floor general. He had no floor generalship that I could see. He was one of those guys that could give you 15 points in 7 minutes, and then
that's what
you
he
might
was.
as well sit him because you've used his good portion. Now, I think he's gotten better since then. I think he's become more mature. He powdered his way off a team the year before they won a ring, which I think will make you humble if you think about it. And he thought about it. Another team, the Clippers, let him go when he could have been a good piece for them at one point in time. Ty Lue, a pretty good guy, coach relations guy with player relations. They traded him to Atlanta, who immediately dropped him, and that's when Tim Conley, who drafted him, scooped him up on a two-way. But I will tell you, the right people like him. Where I wonder if I'm wrong is Chris Finch really likes him, and he likes him for ways that I don't understand. I usually know what Chris Finch is talking about and agree with it. When he says he's got a ton of talent and he's a pass-first point guard, I don't see it. I don't see that from him. Anthony Edwards likes him for a totally different reason, which he's a baller. He's a hooper, and Ant loves the joy with which he plays and the challenges he wants to present to another team. Ant recognizes a kindred spirit there. I would say the difference there is level of talent. You can act that way when you have Anthony Edwards' talent. If you have Bones Highland's level of talent, you are prone to overextend yourself. And I think there are a lot of players that flame out in this league that way.
So,
so
let me do a player example of a guy who I know you are not, you don't like as a player, Keontae George.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Keontae George is a really good example who's having, for people who haven't been paying attention, having a really good
productive year.
Yeah. And I think that the point I'm making with that is sometimes players who are of that archetype of as Keontae George is, as Bones Highland is, and frankly, as Rob Dillingham theoretically is, it's really this razor's edge sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think where you're getting so much usage, the ball is in your hand, you're being asked actually to have a questionable shot selection and relied upon to be making those, to be a high level shot maker. And when you are not, when you're playing that way and not being a high level shot maker, it is
ugly.
It is ugly and potentially cancerous, to the group out there. And those are the guys who can really, sink a net rating, because they're probably not giving you very much on the defensive side of the floor. But it is the type of player that when it finds itself can really be the right ingredient to a team and have a very swift shift in impact for the positive. I'm not saying Bones is going to, and all of a sudden be what Keontae George has and turned into a completely different level of player. Why I'm open to the possibility is it's actually a watching him and a mental thing with him. I wrote down in my notes tonight, Bones is locked in every night in a way that reminds me of Nikhil, obviously in his own sort of way.
Yep.
But there is an embracing of the moment and the opportunity that is here, and not taking that casually. And that makes me believe that there's a path here for something that is like with intention can be a lot better than what we remembered previously. And frankly, in his opportunities, Bones has been pretty good. It's been an impactful, positive player and simultaneously fitting a huge need that this team has right now. So I'm just noting that it is a razor's edge, and there is on a razor's edge is there's a way to fall into the good side of things, and largely I feel like Bones has done that, and I respect the way he's mentally approaching it, and that makes me believe a little bit more too.
I think that's well said. I think the first time you were higher on Bones than I was right after he started to get back into the rhythm we were having. And you said, I think that he could be something to the point, kind of what you said right now, although obviously we have a lot more information now. Right. And I was surprised. I thought, oh boy, he's really higher on Bones than I am. So, and I've watched Bones, and every now and then he'll do things that'll almost flip me over there, where I'll say, there's growth there. And I think if I do go over there, it's going to be a concession that the situation is absolutely right for that type of thing. And that may just be my way of saving face, but I also think it would be very easy for a guy like him to torpedo a team that didn't need exactly kind of what he's bringing. I'm going to be curious to see what happens when he gets targeted on defense the way Jordan Clarkson was tonight, for example, or something like that. Where people begin to say, all right, he's a part of the rotation now and he can hurt you. How can we hurt them?
What I'm saying is don't let those things cloud the things that are happening and helpful.
And, and to be honest with you,
or that's my opinion.
It was a good. What I liked was so many questions were about the point guard position, and there's a lot of Bones energy, which makes sense. The story is great. Exactly. And it's the kind of, the kind of player I like, and you can understand why I'm not a Bones highlight guy. It doesn't fit my bias as to the kind of basketball player I enjoy the most. So I'm sure that bias works against a more, clear-eyed view of what's going on with him. But I'm not going to be stupid about it. I mean, I was wrong about Naz Reid. I held on to that for a couple of years and gradually got less and less credible being doubtful of Naz Reid to the point where, you have to give it up. And I would gladly do that. I mean, if that's the way it goes, you can only, you sit down and talk about basketball. If you're not saying what you believe, then there's no point.
No.
No. I'm just explaining. I'm not trying to be a jerk when it comes to Bones Highland.
Mm-hmm.
I just have either a blind spot or a vision that skews differently than what a lot of other people see. I do think the fact that both Finch and Ant really embrace him for what I regard as fairly different reasons is a point in his favor, because I think both of those guys really want to win.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they take a fancy to somebody because they like the way he plays. They see that this guy can help them. So that works. And then, of course, you get plus 24 and 25 minutes. I have to say to myself, okay, how do you fit that into your overall mindset about this? It may take 2 or 3 more weeks of this, and I'll say, I was basing my opinion a little bit too much on prior bias, and it's just not working out. Or it may be that things will even out again, and I'll be saying, well, I need more information, and meanwhile, my skepticism will remain valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Skepticism is valuable if there's some kind of credibility to it. Once it doesn't have any credibility, you're just being a jerk about it.
Yeah, and to clarify for me is like, I'm not seeing a Nas arc to this. I'm not. There weirdly are some similarities to that where I was with Nas, I was impressed by the outline, and I was impressed by the skill within the outline. I see Bones' shortcomings too, and I see them largely to be in the form of shot selection and on the defensive side of the ball. When you are a bench player and you are like the 8th, 9th man, you can pretty well curb for that as the coach and not play the player if and when,
as we've seen
that, as that's getting attacked. I mean, we talk all the time about, there's all these guys, not enough minutes for all of them. Well, if it's a team that Bones can't do the things that Bones does well against, don't play him. They do have the luxury to not be able to not have to play him, so long as Mike Conley's healthy and gives you another basic style of point guard there. And those are just the bench players. I mean, they can also, it's not like they're going to give up the no point guard lineups. That's still going to be the starting lineup once this team's back healthy. It's going to be Dante, Ant, and Julius as the point players in that group. I just think I think Bones is lower risk in reality than it seems, given what the role is and on the team.
I want to extend this just a little bit more, because you said the thing about Dillingham, choosing Dillingham. I said flatly, if it came down to this, way I would work it is I would play Dillingham over Bones, which I think is probably the furthest. That would probably be the most incendiary.
That's what got me to be like, okay, we're talking about this tonight.
But the way Dillingham played the fourth quarter against OKC was a different player. And it was because the coach wasn't on the sidelines. The assistant coach was on the sidelines.
Well, that's your opinion. I mean,
was it a wild coincidence that Dillingham called his own number, two out of 4 possessions against a 24-2 team?
I think so.
In high leverage minutes. You really think it was a coincidence?
Yeah, I mean, he played well in the first game against Oklahoma City.
Yeah,
Finch was on the sideline then.
Maybe. I feel like the relationship between Finch and Dillingham is mutually unproductive.
It certainly seems that way. I'm just
and so what I would like to see is Finch be a little more relenting in the way he approaches Dillingham and not have Dillingham feel like, I'd like to see Finch give Dillingham as many chances as Shannon gets, as many buys. Shannon has shit the bed twice as much as Dillingham has this year and is ahead of him in the rotation and is not playing a position. Obviously they need his pace and scoring, driving the basket, but you really need a backup point guard for the future. All I'm saying is that
I'm a Rob guy too. Like I'm not an anti.
The crazy thing is I want to find out, and I don't think we're finding out. And so, and Finch's obvious rejoinder to that will be, you want to find out in the middle of an incredibly competitive Western Conference where it's clear that there's going to be like 5 or 6 teams.
Oh no, I get what's happening with Rob right now makes sense to me, and he's out of the rotation. And I get that, given what the alternatives are,
right?
In large part, given that Bones is an alternative here,
right?
And so is
clearly Mike. Right now, as we speak, a very successful alternative. I mean, the momentum right now, if we're looking at evidence-based decision making, it makes no sense at all to play Dillingham over Bones Highland. It doesn't. I get that.
Okay. I was like, I didn't write it.
No, but if you're looking at, is Bones going to be able to sustain that? And what is the upside of Dillingham if you find out a little bit more what he can do under a little bit different strictures?
Yeah. I'm with that.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. No, and I don't know. The Rob thing is gonna be funky here because there isn't, when this team is healthy and assuming Jaden's back here shortly, there isn't a 12-minute a night role available for Rob Dillingham.
Right.
And if that's not available for Rob Dillingham, then in my opinion, then he shouldn't be playing.
Right.
Because the little half measure thing, I don't think is good for a 20-year-old.
And you're not going to bench Bones Highland after a plus 24. All I'm saying is I think there can be a time. I don't think that we want to lock in what we're seeing now.
Sure.
I want to see more from Bones. I'm the skeptic about it. And I will be happy to admit I'm wrong when I decide I'm wrong, which is going to be later than other people think I'm wrong, probably.
Yeah, it's just weird to like contextualize what the level is, because we're using names like Nikhil and Nas and stuff like that. Or I am, and that's not what I'm talking about.
No, I know.
I'm not talking about that level. I'm just seeing elements.
You're talking about an eighth man. You're talking about an eighth man who can give you a spark
on a team that currently doesn't have, a guy who's consistently giving them a spark off the bench. That's a true guard.
If Bones can hit his shots, put pace in the game, make everybody happy around him, and occasionally screw up on defense and shoot when he shouldn't shoot, or turn down shots when he shouldn't turn down shots, all viable criticisms, but not injurious criticisms at the current time or injurious actions at the current time. Right now, the evidence says you play Bones Highland, and I think that the evidence, I can't refute that evidence.
I would say my stance is somewhere between you and Finch. Because Finch will play him for 30 minutes.
Finch loves him.
Yeah. I mean,
Finch may love him because he isn't Rob Dillingham.
He played more minutes than Nas tonight.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, I think there's been a bit of an over-indexing of Bones there, but I'm simultaneously not as skeptical as you. So that's where I would.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good place.
And we're moving right now. Like, we don't know. It's okay to be kind of accounting, right now of what's available.
And we don't know if we are seeing a Mike Conley boomlet.
Yeah.
One of the last gaffes of a, great veteran, or whether we're seeing a Mike Conley who finally feels healthy and has cleared his head of whatever was going on when he had to get shelved from the starting lineup. And he's going to start to give you the kind of play that Conley has given us, as we've watched him the last 3 games, or or 2 games, I guess, because that's huge. Bones Highland becomes a lot more valuable if Mike Conley can take care of the poise end of things.
So let's wrap it up on Mike. I'm trying to figure out with Mike what to think about how last year went. Because the first half of the year was rough, remember? And
he got better.
And then it was better in the second half of the year. And why was it rough at the beginning of the year last year?
He said it was injuries. He said particularly that, the golf thing or whatever.
Yeah, his wrist. Yeah, his wrist. It didn't allow him to work out. So there was an injury element to it, the wrist. And then there was also
defensive slowness and
just the role. It was the Julia. He wasn't the point guard anymore.
And Finch is already
that was the biggest thing.
That horse is out of the barn. The barn is burned down, and the horse is probably glue by now.
I'm just saying, Mike didn't know what his role was at the beginning of last season too, and that played, and it was a different role, and it was a role he'd never played before, where he was starting at point guard, but he was just running from corner to corner.
Right,
and that he figured out some of how to play that way, but they also in the second half of the season shifted more into finding something that made Mike's play a little bit more rhythmic.
Right.
And he had a much better second half of the season.
And now it's deja vu.
Maybe. I don't know. Right. I'm not full bore. I mean, the first 25 games of the season pre this injury that Mike sat out 2 weeks for was worse than the beginning of last season too.
I agree.
So, and he's a year older, sometimes the cliff is the cliff.
Yep.
But I just don't know exactly what to make out of something like this happened a year ago, and then it got better, and Mike was an important part of the regular season team at the end of the season, and he was an important piece in the playoffs for this team.
So
too.
Let's review, though.
Sure.
Mike Conley.
I don't have a stance. I'm just saying that's what I'm thinking about.
This has nothing to do with rebutting you. This, I think, is revealing why Mike Conley might go home and say to his wife, it's happening all over again. Because remember, he was going to be the guy that got the team going in transition. He was going to be the starting point guard while everyone else was running up the floor that would grab the ball and run up and create the offense. He was going to be the guy who they worried about overtaxing him. So they had to figure out how to get his 8, 6, whatever minutes segments you wanted to have in. But the question was, how can we continue to have Mike Conley be a valuable part of the team as much as possible until 2 hours before the opener?
Yeah.
Literally not a word spoken about this until then. Suddenly, Dante DiVincenzo is the starting point guard, not only against a team that plays, 24/7 pressure in Portland, but all the way through from now on. And it was because they're trying to figure out a way to get Mike's shift better done.
And to give Dante a bigger role.
But I don't think that was said.
Not at that time, later on. Yeah.
So now, we had another funky beginning involving Mike Conley, where any reasonable person would say they have too much respect for this guy and they don't want to say it's time to go part way out to pasture, but that's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And that seemed to me to be a grudgingly sad but realistic status quo until he comes back and lights the world on fire second half against Milwaukee and plays really well tonight. And I go in there and say, you're moving a lot better. He goes, yeah, I'm feeling great. I've never felt, I don't know. Is this a boomlet? Is this like a week or two? And then, Mike Conley's incredibly storied career has taken its toll on him, and he gets back to not being able to push himself in the ways he's pushing himself newly back? Or is this a way of Conley again kind of summoning what he did last year and saying, I can do this, 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 and this, and the team saying, We think you can too. And if that's true, then that backup point guard position and the rotation after Nas, 7, 8, 9 begins to fall into place a lot more. It's a big question. It's a big question. Conley answers that question, it is a very, very different team than if he can answer that question or doesn't answer that question.
My guess would be that Mike Conley has played his worst basketball of the season. And he does not. His worst basketball of the season happened in early December and November. And you don't get, I don't think the Mike of 2-3 years ago is coming back.
Right.
And I'm not saying he's not going to have a bad game here or there where the ways he struggled earlier pop up, but it was a bad couple weeks there before he started sitting out with his Achilles tendinopathy.
Yeah.
That kind of felt like the end. And I do think it'll be better from, I would wager that his worst basketball is behind him and that it'll be something a little bit better than that, if not what we've seen for these last 2 games here. Because age is absolutely a factor in this. I just want to hammer home that rhythm and role definition, I think, is a factor in the bad start to the season that Mike Conley has had. And I think that is beginning to clarify itself some and will only continue to clarify itself more and more over the course of the season. That'd be my guess.
I think that's probably accurate. I view a relatively healthy, declining but not declined Mike Conley as a skeleton key. A guy who can give you the poise without the imposed structure. Chris Finch does not want to impose structure. It's just not his way. And as a result, this team occasionally just falls apart and doesn't have any poise going forward because they have too much freedom. Mike Conley is kind of Finch's brain on the court saying, we can't get over our skis. This is what we need to do. But
as Kyle Anderson was.
In order to do that, he needs to play well enough to have the credibility to impose that and also then to execute that.
Yeah.
If he can do that, that's a big deal.
And I don't know. I don't know because the whole age thing is weird and sometimes it does just fall off. But credit to him. Starting the second half against Milwaukee and then starting and playing 30 minutes tonight.
So eye-droppingly, he went out there and started that weave with people. What he did, I said after the Milwaukee game when we were interviewing him, as he was talking about what he needed to do, I said, your job is to make people move. He said, that's right. And then he went into more and more. And that essentially is really what it comes down to, is the team, when it gets into these funks, stagnates and worries. And you just, the stank of it just comes off the floor, it just, and the way to cure that is to move around, because when you move around, you find out if you're going to be open or not. And if you're not open, that probably means somebody else will be if everybody's moving.
Right.
And they forget that because they're so used to the offense being Julius or Ant feeding people or taking it themselves. Decision-making, very, very easy. I don't have to do anything. Well, if you move, you may be involved.
Right.
And that's what Conley did against Milwaukee. Everybody started moving, and somebody like Nas, Nas can't do that for everybody else. But when somebody like Conley's on the floor having people move, Nas is going to be open in the corner, and he's going to, he as the other night, he hit those shots. So
I'm playing Mike Conley if a team's running a zone. I'll tell you that.
Exactly. And also,
as Milwaukee,
when the team begins to crack at the seams and begins to strain and say, God damn it. And Julius Randle is saying, I am not going to let this happen. I am going to go through 3 guys again, and this time it's going to work, that you bring Mike Conley out on the floor.
Right.
You know, it's better than calling a play. You could just say, all right, this is the way it's going to work. So,
and it's like Bones too, where when it's not working, you can just pull it off,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
he can close the night with 14 minutes played.
Yeah.
That's fine, you know.
Yeah.
Like
provided that both Ant and Randle are not, stripping their gears simultaneously. A team like Oklahoma City can do that.
Right.
They can strip the gears of the 2 players they need to strip the gears of, and then you're fucked.
Yeah.
And so that's the beauty of a Mike Conley, if a Mike Conley is ready. And that's precisely why I got a lot of questions about point guard trades that I didn't put in, because I'm not, first of all, that's all stupid talk to me anyway. But secondly, it's way too premature for that. We'd have no idea whether or not this team is going to need a trade. And so,
well, I mean, the roster's funky and there's imbalances, and I think that does make it natural and reasonable for people to be thinking about point guard trades and those sort of things. But my response, I think you and I talked a little bit about Kobe White before, and it's like, okay, cool, you got a point guard. Who did you give away?
Well, that's the thing. I talk about trades the way Chris Finch talks about rotations. Okay, fine. You want to bring somebody in?
Yeah.
Whose minutes are you messing with?
Yeah.
Whenever anybody talks about, let's trade this guy. Okay, who are you giving up? I mean, don't do me the classic,
Right.
I'll give you my 9th and 10th guys for your 6th man who fits my team perfectly,
Well, and there's not going to be, if the Wolves make a trade, it's not going to be involving draft picks.
Right.
So it's going to be involving a player. Like that's a huge,
and they're up against the second apron. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what I wrote in the piece. You can't sweeten the pot with picks, and you have very, very real. The last thing in the world you want to do is get into the second apron for a second year in a row.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. I mean, I'm not out of hand dismissing a point guard trade. We're talking about solutions to the Wolves' clear point guard issue being Bones Highland and 38-year-old Mike Conley. It's not.
And that's why Tim Conley makes the big bucks. I mean, it is up to him if he, and that's why I left it my mailbag call.
Right.
If he can improve the team, I mean, I have no idea who's available and what this team feels it can sacrifice. But if I'm not saying trades are forbidden. I'm saying I don't have the inside knowledge nor the expertise. I can go to the trade machine and dream up something the way any other guy can, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, no, I think it's like the conversation we had about Kobe White of like, what would that archetype of player mean to this team? He's a good player. Would he have a strong meaning on this team, at a team that's ready to win right now? Jake Fisher put out the Colin Sexton name as one to monitor for the Wolves, and I'll spend more time thinking about that. But every one of these players does need to be put through the grinder of, what would be going out to get Kobe White? What would be going out to get Colin Sexton? Because it would be an important ingredient from their current rotation.
Well, there are 2 ways to look at this. One is when OKC got beat by Dallas, and everybody said they needed size. Why didn't they go out and get size? Dallas beat them with size, and that's all there is to it. All these things. And Presti waited and got Hartenstein and got Chet healthy, and all of a sudden they didn't need size anymore. Patience. On the other hand, Dallas swung a deal. Gafford isn't even in their rotation round. Can you believe that? I mean, Lively's hurt. Gafford isn't. I think they just beat the Spurs or somebody good tonight. Or no, Denver. I think. Well, at least they were up on Denver. But the point is, everything clicked for them with a deal. Changing teams is a gamble and chimerical.
Yeah. I'm just saying, given where the Wolves are at with a roster that doesn't make a lot of sense, I'm not
Doesn't make sense to
rule it out.
It doesn't make sense to rule it out, but that means that something is going to happen that we don't have knowledge of.
Sure. Yeah. No,
I mean, I don't think Kobe White is the answer. And I don't see anybody that nobody has proposed a trade where I thought, A, it would help, and B, it's realistic.
Yeah, but 3 years ago, we wouldn't have thought that Mike Conley and Nickeil Alexander-Walker were the answer either,
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, well, we'll see. I do think conversation is reasonable to have here because it's a funky position. This was fun. We haven't done an immediate like a pod right after.
Sure.
A game
Well, I mean, it's 36 hours to Christmas or something.
I know. Yeah, we gotta.
So we're both not going to be around.
It's technically Christmas Eve. It's after midnight. There we go.
There you go. See, okay.
Yes.
And and you're going to be going away. I'm going to be staying here, nesting with my family, and
I'm going to be nesting too.
You'll be nesting in another place. Oh no,
no, I'm
right.
staying here.
Christmas
I'm
here. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, no, we'll as I have been mentioning on previous episodes, no more episodes this week. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday will be, well, I guess this is going to come out on Wednesday, so there will be a Wednesday episode, but the next one
today is Wednesday, buddy.
Yeah, it is Wednesday. Oh, Jesus. Kyle and I are going, I want to get an episode in on the Wolves Nuggets game, and the earliest time that we'll be able to make that happen is Saturday afternoon, the 27th. So that'll be the next episode after this. But seriously, did me a solid of coming here and doing this today.
Hey,
so we
pleasure.
got another one in here before Christmas, and we'll do something at some point next week as well.
Down the road.
Yes.
How far? Who knows?
And shout out to our friends at Falling Knife. This isn't an ad read, but we were drinking Falling Knife beer here. You could go there to watch Wolves Nuggets on
right.
Christmas Day. Our friend
verbal
Dan
tip.
Herman.
I just when he said you wanted to call a pod for after the game tonight, I looked at my fridge and I had Badger Hills Trader. I had the beer. What's it called? Well, anyway, and I had Falling Knife's verbal tip, and I thought.
So come to hang out with Dane.
My favorite beer. It's one of your favorite beers.
It is.
So it was the one to bring.
Yeah. No, go to Falling Knife on Christmas Day. Dan Herman, who you've heard talking on podcasts when we've been over there, the owner over there, he's going to be running the tap room that day, and then that on New Year's Eve they're doing that New Year's early party as well. So as like we always say, support the people who support us. We do appreciate that. Appreciate you coming in and doing this, Britt. And yeah, until Saturday, the 27th, with Kyle. He's Britt. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.